Okay, it just asked me if I approved of going live. There was a pop-up.
Okay, here we are. Awesome. And it looks like I'm a bit frozen.
Not to me.
Okay, whoops, we're gonna hold on a second. We're gonna have like this crazy feedback situation. So I'm gonna go like this. Oh my God. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Conversations with, and my technical prowess is faltering as I can't get us live in Facebook. So we're here live on YouTube, and I'll be dropping this into the Facebook group in a little while. So good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Tracy. I'm glad that you were struggling with with whatever it was being struggled with.
With the
Glad it wasn't
streaming.
me.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. So I'm so delighted to have you here with me today, Keith. And this is Keith Robinson. He's got this new book, The Buddha in Our Bellies. And I had the great privilege of working with Keith through the fall, no, spring of last year, spring of 2022. And he said, I have a deadline to get this book done by May 2023. And he met his deadline, and here it is out into the world. And it's such a thrill to see it in the flesh, essentially. So welcome, Keith.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I'm thrilled to be talking to our group, and it's wonderful and nervous right now.
Well, I'd love if you would introduce yourself, tell the world a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dive into the book.
Okay. A little bit about myself. I'm a sommelier by trade, which means that I educate people about wine and other beverages as well. For the last 30 years or so, I've been writing blog posts, magazine articles, mostly about wine and culture, wine and civilization, spirituality. And I've also been writing other topics, short pieces about Buddhism. I edited a online Buddhist newsletter for a number of years. I've written about sex, about my view of the world, my opinions about other people, everything it seems, except the central ongoing issue of my life, that since I was a child, I've had Crohn's disease. And along with that, my relationship to my body. And it was the one thing I couldn't write about. I thought I was too different. I was uniquely unique. And anyway, who wants to read about my bowel movements? Who wants to read a whole book about my bowel movements?
Well, I think it's a little bit more than that little poop emoji on the cover or something. Well, how did you then decide, okay, like I think this is really interesting and interesting for writers, because quite often the thing that we avoid writing is the big story that we actually eventually need to get to. So tell us how you came to decide, okay, I'm going to write this book, and how you started.
The short answer is the pandemic happened. And we were at the beginning of the pandemic, my wife and I were trapped in a way in a tiny village in Spain. Spain was like the epicenter at the very beginning, if you remember, way back then. And
too much stuff has happened. I don't know.
Yeah, so much stuff has happened. So much stuff has happened in the last week. Mm-hmm. So long story short, it made me aware, A, of my own mortality. I'm not a young guy. B, of possibly humanity's mortality, and my desire to do what I could to, not to overstate my altruism, but to contribute what I could to the healing of our planet. I don't think I was unusual. I mean, we read about the people that did all they could to not help.
Mhm.
But I think most people, we're looking for ways to be kind. We're looking for ways to contribute. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So,
so, yeah,
yeah,
this is
so
the
that
result.
right. So how did you kind of approach it then? How did you just sit down and go, I'm gonna write this story, or how did the because it's not well, I'd love if you shared how you structured the book because it's got some unique qualities to it. And then also, yeah, did you just sit down and go, I'm going to write a book, or what happened?
No, in fact, what I started by doing is I started writing little, again, blog posts or Facebook posts or just stuff for friends about other people in history who had been faced with, exile, for example, or lockdown, for example, Newton, Dante, Nietzsche, and people that had done amazing things locked down or kicked out. And I started writing those, and then those evolved into some other kind of articles. And then I was sharing them with one friend in particular, and he said, you have a book, and the book doesn't include much of any of that stuff, but
Mhm.
what it does include, and this, so yeah, and the structure, it is possibly unusual. I compared in some ways to the book Warrior Woman.
Mhm.
Um,
By
Author
Maxine
escapes me.
Hong Kingston.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Um, which sort of has these two parts that speak to each other on and off through the book of this immigrant to North America from China, and her story coming into a sort of this middle class lifestyle, um, which honestly was more or less conventional. But then there's this, it keeps bouncing to this other story of her in this real village in China, but living amongst ghosts and
Mhm.
becoming this warrior ghost. And it's really an extraordinary book. I'm not comparing myself, only in that sort of back and forth kind of a way. So it's primarily my story, and my story of how I dealt with Crohn's, but more than Crohn's, how I dealt with belonging and my identity. And then my wife's story, written by her, um, interacts with that. And then, because so much of our own experience is connected to our practice of Buddhism, I include these speculative, imaginative Buddhist tales that hopefully complement our stories. And then more structure, uh, some poetry, yeah, interspersed. And
So, and
yes,
go
well,
on.
I'll let the reader decide whether it works or not.
All
And
right.
so far, people are saying it does work. Yeah,
Yeah. So very textured and alive in that way. And when you were coming, I mean, I know you grappled with the structure, but when you came to me, well, first of all, what was the biggest challenge for you in terms of writing this book? And it really is a book that hinges on this body.
it does. And my relationship, and my problematic relationship to my own body. With
Mhm.
Crohn's disease, my intestines are a foreign object, and my body tries to kick them out continuously. It treats it as an like I'm allergic to my own digestive system,
Mhm.
from top to very bottom, anywhere along the line. Um, so I didn't understand that as a kid. Didn't even know what I had. All I knew is that my stomach was a kind of enemy. I
Mhm.
hurt. My stomach hurt
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Um, and beyond that, coming from a reasonably dysfunctional family, and moving a lot as a kid, I didn't know where I belonged in the world either. I didn't know if I belonged in this city and that's in this school. I didn't really feel like I belonged in my own family. So this was a question that was throughout my identity. And so in writing this book, the biggest challenge was that I had to figure that out in a very deep body centric way. I got a pretty good head. I got a pretty good heart, but I needed to learn to pay attention to my guts that weren't my enemy, that were trying to teach me a lesson. My instinct, my intuition, my courage, all those things that we associate with guts metaphorically, we're now finding are actually biology. It's actually anatomy. It's actually evolution.
Yeah. So how was that journey for you to come into this body that you had a problematic relationship with?
It was, as you can imagine, very difficult, painful, joyous. I when I would start paying attention to these messages, just the tiniest thread of something, if when I paid attention to it, it would work into this whole scene and fit different parts of the story all together, and would be incredibly healing for me as well. So the process is, which our intention was to, I don't want to say help others, but help others, right? Somehow show other people that they can turn, however bleak their life is, that they can find new possibilities, new hope. But that's exactly what I did. That was actually the process that I was going through in writing it.
So, can you give an example of one of those threads of going into the body, like something that you may have, well, two examples, like a thing you may have avoided, and when you finally went in there and kind of listened, what riches you found?
Specific examples, no, because it was continuous. It was throughout, and I'm drawing a blank on a specific, other than I when you're writing, you're trying to make things fit. You're sometimes one sentence will serve three different functions in terms of answering a question and leading to something that's going to happen in the future. And I would do, actually, I call it the teacup meditation of yours. I don't know what it's really called, but you do a getting into your body meditation, and on the YouTube video, there's a teapot on the cover, so I call it the teapot meditation. And if I paid attention, there would be just like the tiniest thread. And if I paid attention to it and I worked with it and I started writing with it, very often it would end up in the bin basket, of course, right? This didn't happen every single day, but I'm sure as soon as we're done talking, I'll think of a really good example.
Well, but maybe instead of an example, you can just sort of talk about the difference in the way of the like felt sense or the somatic experience of what it was to work from that place versus what the cerebral kind of thinking zone.
Okay. Being a very cerebral kind of thinking person, I can be preachy, and this forced me into scene. It forced me into character. It forced me into, in fact, you had this word. Hope we got it right. Propinquity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Like where the characters are in relationship to each other, in relationship to their space. Something I never thought about when I wrote previously. Right? Mm-hmm. Figuring out like blocking a play, blocking a stage, and all those elements and the environment, all those kind of things had to contribute to the scene. It's all part of the body. It's all the physical stuff, and everybody in the scene is having. Maybe they're just sitting, but there's 1,000 ways to sit, and I had to feel into where they slouching, right? Were they perching? Were they, each character? And even if I didn't write those things out, or I did write them out, but if they didn't end up in the book, right? It's built into the legitimacy of, if you will, of the felt sense. So each character, they're having a psychosomatic experience. So I had to have that experience too, even Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, because I love what you're saying about that even if it didn't make it into the final draft, it contributed to the fabric of the scene. And it is true. It's like if we're in a park and the person beside us on the bench who's a stranger is sitting in a very upright, hypervigilant kind of way versus someone who's just chilling versus someone who's passed out, all of that's going to create a different vibe and a different energy in the scene, and it matters.
It totally matters. And as the writer and as the narrator and as the character of many of these scenes, I have to know that. I
Mm-hmm.
have to be inside of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you started to work in that way, what did you feel the like quality, how did you feel the quality of the writing shift for you?
I liked it. I liked it, and I would read it back to myself, and of course things. I mean, I'm a tinkerer too, and so I'm constantly changing, looking for those active verbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do I need to put weather in, and all those questions of body? It's all questions of body, and I had to know that, and then try to write it. And as I wrote it, I liked it more and more and more.
Mm, that's really beautiful. Wow, that's so lovely to hear, just in terms of appreciating your own work and letting that, like, the mind can be really critical and the body I think is so generous. And
That
so
that,
it's
that could be it.
yeah, it's so sweet to hear that when it came, the more sort of embodied the writing became, the more actually it appealed to the mind, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and still to this day, I mean, I've obviously read every single passage 100, if not 200 times, um, but I still read passages, and it's quite emotional. It's quite emotional. But then I have to say to myself, okay, you're feeling this, but is the reader getting that? And then,
Mm,
but I got to just trust that it comes through.
yeah. Well, Keith, maybe you can tell people where they can find your book, and we certainly will put it into the comments below.
Please do. I hope everybody in the group, yay, reads it. It's available on all Amazons around the world, in paperback and in Kindle if it's Amazon. It's also available downloadable um, in other formats. It's available a lot of places. If you look on your favorite online retailer, uh, as well as I think there's a promotion by a group called Book Funnel this month that has it for free. So
Oh,
you just have to become a anyway. I put a note on the group about that. Um,
okay.
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, I recommend that everyone pick up a copy and read it for its bodily wisdom. And I'm curious if there's anything else that you wanted to say about your process, Keith, and how, I mean, seems so rich that coming into the body and um, that switch from up here to in here, and it's quite a journey.
I think particularly if I can say this for guys, um, I think I think we are trained to not be in our bodies. Um, I heard once that we're able to feel. This is a gross generalization, but anger and lust, and sort of everything in between, we don't know what to do with, and we don't even feel it, which is of course is not true. But as a gross generalization, as a guy, that has been feeling and knowing what I'm feeling,
Hmm.
even in terms of my own stomach, right? In terms of my own body.
Hmm.
Uh, the only other thing I'd like to say about process, and I'm going to give you a big promo shout out here, Ms. Tracy Skuse, because your classes have meant so much to this process.
Mm.
You're, the way you teach, the way you read, and the way you interact with our writings has been absolutely amazing. Also, big shout out to my group members, Sandy and Justine. I love you, ladies. You've been amazingly supportive, amazing, and they were in the spring intensive with me, and they've been absolutely wonderful during and since.
Yes, yes. A shout out to all of them. And yeah, and congratulations, Keith. This is no small undertaking, and it's really, really thrilling to see that you've taken it all the way out into the world. And it's really been an honor to walk beside you in this journey.
Thank you so very much for all your help. Yeah,
Okay, and thank
and
you,
for today.
everyone.